Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and I do hope that you're doing incredibly well. We've got a lovely story for you this evening, so wherever you are, whether you're walking your dog, and hello to you if you're walking your dog under the full moon, it's fantastic to hear that. Love to each and every one of you, whether you're having coffee, whatever you're doing, I do hope you're incredibly well. Sending you tons and tons of love. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, my name is Jennifer and I'm from West Virginia, and one day upon clearing out my attic, I found a large collection of old dusty letters that, although very old and weathered, were in surprisingly good condition, although rather crisp. I very nearly threw them away, but curiosity got the better of me, and I discovered an interesting letter written by a woman who claimed she was kidnapped by the Shawnee Indians and escaped in 1755. I believe she wrote this letter to an ancestor of mine, who would seem was her very best friend. After personally reading this letter, which I found to be incredibly fascinating, I thought I'd send you a copy, as during her extraordinary escape, it would appear that she encountered a Bigfoot, and so here is her miraculous and extraordinary story. Dear Roberta, written on the 16th of December, 1755. How much I've missed you and longed to see you again. It seems so long since I saw you last, but thoughts of you are never far from my mind, and you are forever in my heart, as always my very dearest, most beloved friend. No doubt you have heard of the grievous misfortune that struck down our family in recent months, an abrupt, unforeseen event that we would never have envisaged occurring to our beloved and close-knit family. Sadly, it would seem that we are not immune to tragedy, especially at such a turbulent time as this. It would seem that our relationship with the Shawnee Indians is not good these days, and they have a strong distrust of the pale faces. I cannot blame them for that, as the white man has given them much to be aggrieved about in our history, since we first came to the Americas, and seized much of their land. I can also see things from their perspective with a renewed, unbiased understanding, as I've actually lived with the Shawnees. The events that transpired on that fateful day erupted so incredibly quickly that in an instant our lives were unequivocally changed forever, and I was not prepared for the shocking challenges that awaited me over the horizon, that left me staring death blindly in the face on many occasions. It was on the 13th of July, 1755, that about 7 Shawnee warriors raided Draper's Meadow and killed about 7 of our people, including poor Mama and little Puff-Face. May God rest their souls. Luckily, my husband managed to escape to the forest, but several of us were made captives, and that includes myself, of course. My sons were also taken captive, along with my mother-in-law. Sadly, that's all a long story, of which I wish to spare you the ugly, grisly details, as I have more pressing, rather curious issues at stake, a matter I wish only to share with you, my precious dear friend, as secrets have no boundaries between us. To put it in brief terms, I was so shocked by what had happened to us and felt an extreme hatred and indignation towards our Indian captors. But much to my surprise, the loathing dissipated, as slowly they began to earn my respect, for these men were indeed impressive warriors that knew no fear. We travelled for many long, agonizing days, with many of our horses that had been rounded up and taken along with an abundance of our worldly possessions, which were deemed of great value to the Indians. The passage was irksome and maddening, and I grew weary and tired from the long, hazardous hike. The Indian warriors were intimidating, strong, powerful men, and, as I said before, impressively fearless in every regard, but they did treat us well. We followed the Ohio River until we reached Shawnee Town. I was taken to live with a Shawnee family, and my sons and mother-in-law were shepherded to other places further afield, although where they went I have absolutely no comprehension. But I could not allow my saddened heart to become discouraged over what I had little control or power to change. I could, however, rest in the knowledge that they were still living, and that was of a great relief to me. When I arrived at my residential abode, which was a wigwam, my clothes were ripped up into shreds by the Shawnee woman there. She was very nice, and gave me a highly decorated overblouse and leggings to wear instead, including a pair of comfortable moccasins. I initially spent my time sewing skirts with a Shawnee woman, which we traded along with skins and salt for goods, and the exchanges were very fair. I also helped them to grow squashes, beans and corn on their land outside the wigwam, which we cooked with all our meals. I noticed that there were many white people like myself that had been taken captives from the Virginian frontier, and they all looked resigned to their plight, which I fathomed to be of a grave impediment. After about 3 weeks or so, I travelled to Lower Shawnee Town and was taken to Big Bone's Salt Lick, where I worked at boiling the brine to make salt for my captives, for the purposes of trade, of course. It was then that I hatched an outrageous plan with one of the other white captives, who I tirelessly tried to befriend. Although I hasten to say she was of a difficult disposition and a rather disagreeable countenance. I suggested we should escape and retrace the steps from whence we had come with the Indian warriors by following the Ohio River. My friend was very certain that we would die should we attempt such a bold act of mindless courage, or be caught and killed by the Shawnee Indians if we were observed trying to escape from their clutches. Before long I managed to persuade her that my idea was indeed of sound mind, although not without perilous risk. I asked the 2 Indians who were in charge of the salt lick if we could gather wild grapes in the forest, as we were desirous to enjoy the taste of the refreshing sweet fruit that would quench our thirst. They permitted our eager request and gracefully agreed to let us go. I had hidden my tomahawk, a knife and 2 blankets in a large oak tree at the edge of a woods, and when the Indians weren't looking, I grabbed our supplies and we were well on our way. Our hearts were naturally filled with joyful resolve and eager exuberance for the long passage that lay ahead of us. Naturally, we were ignorantly blissful of the many perils that awaited us on our way. We were, of course, naturally wary that the Indians were searching for us, but hopefully they might conclude that we had been attacked and ravaged by wild animals. I don't believe that they considered us as pale-faced women to have a determined ambition to embark on a journey of escape, because they underestimated our tenacious spirits. I cannot describe to you in words the struggle of the arduous journey that lay ahead of us, that was not without personal sacrifice, as our clothes were torn and our bodies tired, wearied and burdened by this hard, laborious trek. Even our moccasins had seen better days, and were wearing thin at the heels. We were scratched and bruised, and our appearance was far from agreeable, as even the sun had robbed us of our fair complexions. But vanity was far from our minds, as our interest now lay in getting back home. After 4 long days we reached the junction of the Ohio River, and it was here that fortune favoured us. We randomly stumbled on an abandoned cabin that was stacked with corn, and so we took a large portion which we carried on the back of an old horse we found grazing there in the backyard. This was not a wise decision of ours to undertake, because upon crossing the river the old horse sadly drowned, leaving us with only as much corn as we could physically both carry. Soon our corn supply dwindled, and was hungrily devoured, which was troublesome because we were forced to live on black walnuts, wild pawpaws, blackberry roots, and frogs. Yes, you heard right, we were eating frogs, and after a while they were not really that bad to eat. When you're driven by an intense, powerful hunger, it's amazing what you find palatable in such dire circumstances, let me tell you. As you know, Roberta dear, I have never been able to swim, so I marvel at how I managed to cross hundreds of rivers and creeks without drowning, although on many occasions we did make rafts with vine leaves and rafters and mercifully managed to get to the other side of the bank. And how we did this I still don't know. One thing I'd overlooked was how the arrival of the treacherous, bitter cold winter weather would ravage us physically and emotionally, and when the summer bounty ran out we were forced to eat dead animals that we found on our journey, some of it which made us exceedingly ill. Worse still, we often observed Indians out on their winter hunts, and were forced to remain hidden so that they would not observe us. We had come so far, and I was not about to become a captive again. I'm afraid to say that things didn't bode well with my friend, for she soon became angry with me for encouraging her to come on this journey, and became indignant, disheartened, and very aggressive towards me. The cold weather and heavy winter snow broke our resolve, and the continuous starvation really embittered us. It would seem that we became like savage animals, as my fair-weathered friend wanted to literally kill me so that she could eat my body for sustenance. I do not joke about such things, for what I am telling you is without exaggeration of any kind. As incredulous as this may sound, The power of hunger can drive you to extreme mania that you would never ever believe possible. We even drew lots to see who would be the sacrifice, and the lot invariably fell at my feet, as would be my luck. My friend was about to kill me, but I used my wit to persuade her that when we returned to Diper's Meadow, that my husband's father would pay her handsomely, and she seemed appeased by this attractive suggestion, but sadly that was not for long. This is when my story becomes extraordinary and very interesting, and is an account that I am only willing to share with you, for it is of such a bizarre nature that I sincerely doubt others would believe my story credible. But you know my nature, Roberta, and never have I told a lie before, nor am I about to start now. I assure you that this part of my story I have shared only with you, and no one else. Early one winter's morning, after a bitterly cold night spent in the woods close to the mouth of the New River, I was awoken to my friend holding me down, and in one hand she carried a heavy stone, of which she was about to bludgeon me to death. She cried out that her hunger was of such an intensity that our wager was no longer valid, and I was to be her sacrifice so that she could renew her strength and vitality and continue along her way. I struggled and screamed as she held me down with a forceful grip, of which there seemed no escape. I waited for the fatal blow, but it never ever came, because in that moment my friend was restrained by these huge, hairy, long arms, and the stone removed from her hands and promptly discarded and propelled over a long distance away. I was thrown on the back of this large, hairy creature who carried me away from the woods. At first I thought I was being lifted away by a bear. I was utterly terrified because I thought I was going to be eaten alive by this powerful, mighty beast, and my heart was filled with an impending dread. The creature ran with great swiftness of speed and determined resolve, and his agility and strength were commendable indeed. When we were a fair distance from the forest, he placed me safely on the ground. I realized that the creature possessed no ill intent towards me, but had rescued me from my friend. He had clearly witnessed how close I came to losing my life that perilous morning. I cannot describe this creature to you, for words fail me. Its stature was like that of a giant in its length, weight, and girth, and it was covered in fine, long, golden hair, of such a colour and fairness I would be desirous to have myself. Its shoulders were much wider and bigger than any natural man, and its head was shaped like a pyramid, and its long angular face expressed some clear human aspects that were very noticeable indeed, and yet all man he most certainly was not, and neither was he all animal either, but moreover a combination of both, it would seem. I have no comprehension of what this creature actually was, but for me he was like an angel sent from God himself, for he rescued me in a moment when my life would surely have been demanded from me that very day. This gentle creature was so kind to me, and knew great compassion and tenderness of heart. I watched him kill a deer on my behalf with effortless ease and speed, so the animal itself knew no pain. He gave me raw meat from his kill, and we sat on the river's edge and ate together. It was absolutely delicious, and I ate my fill, and kept some meat for my journey, as my wasted body could not eat too big a portion, but after my meal my strength was indeed restored. I thanked the creature in human words, although he did not speak as human language, but I knew he sensed my gratitude, and looked at me kindly with eyes that were the colour of golden honey. I pointed to the creature, expressing an eagerness to cross the New River, and he swam across the water with me upon his back, and I held on to him fast and firm. I will conclude that he swam like an otter, and it would seem that I was of no weighted consequence to him at all. When we got to the other side of the river, I watched the creature retreat back from whence he had come, and it was of no trouble for him, for his strength and power never waned. So impressive and mighty was this beast, and of an intelligence hard to fathom or comprehend, and a sensory perception that seemingly was not of this world. I have no knowledge of what he was, and that is my only vexation. I am very glad to inform you that I did finally reach my home about 6 days later, and was subsequently reunited with my husband. It was a moment of unspeakable joy, of which there are no words. "Mary, is that you?" he cried, holding my face in his hands, as he never believed that he would see me ever again, and surely thought I was gone from this earth. He was appalled to hear of my long, arduous journey, and how close we came to eating human flesh, an idea that was so abhorrent to his well-nourished state. Truly he had little comprehension of the real woeful consequence of true hunger. He was painfully aggrieved by the state of my small, frail form that was so slight that my likeness is like that of a bird, for my body has cannibalized its own tissues. I am still eating little and often, as it is the only way to proceed, but I have seen flesh growing on my cheeks of late, and my clothes are less loose, but it will be a while to regain my full health and strength. Despite my friend's insidious attempts to end my life, the Holy Book teaches us to forgive, and so I felt compassion towards her, and she was soon rescued and taken to safety, but I do not wish to see her ever again, as you can understand. My husband and I are still farming in Dunkirk Bottom, but I am very concerned for the future for fear of being attacked by the Shawnee Indians, because another journey of escape like this is too unspeakable to comprehend, and is one I would surely not survive again. My 2 children that were taken captive by the Shawnee Indians are still not accounted for, but they are forever in my prayers. Once I've regained my strength, my husband and I would like to try for another baby, so keep me forever in your prayers that I will be strong and robust enough to conceive. I do hope your life has not been as eventful as mine, for never take for granted the days when your stomach is pleasantly full, and the world is quiet and subdued, for those days are the simple pleasures of life, and they are the most precious of all. Roberta, I long to see you, and ask that you might consider visiting us in a few months. I hope to persuade my husband to move away from Dunkirk Bottom, for fear our safety is indeed compromised here. Kindest regards and fondest love, Mary. This is a letter that was written to an ancestor of mine. I know the part about when the friend wants to kill Mary does seem unsettling and disturbing for your readers, and I do sincerely apologise for that. But it does give you a remarkable insight into the ravages of hunger that those 2 poor women must have endured, which in the cold light of day may seem barbaric and cruel, but was incredibly real. I believe Mary was a hero, she was brave, and against all odds she survived, and I'm sure that you agree with that. Also, I'm sure you agree that the mystical creature that she encountered was very definitely a Bigfoot. So there you are. That's my story. I just want to thank you so very much for sending us that incredible letter. Those frontier women were so brave and so courageous, and to think that, the woman nearly considered eating Mary is quite extraordinary. But as you say, it shows how treacherous those times were, and how brave they were to escape the Shawnee Indians. So until next time, goodbye and good night.